Welcome, Jen Woods, the Developmental Disabilities Eligibility Manager from Service Access and Management. Welcome, Jen, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm going to let you begin.
Okay, I am here to talk about the developmental disabilities and eligibility process, funding, and services in Berks County. And I'm going to be focusing on how to get connected to what we call the Developmental Disability Supports Coordination Service. So just a little information on what the Developmental Disability Eligibility Manager does, which is what I do. I work out of Service Access Management, Inc. in Berks County, and I complete all the eligibility determination, handle all the process relative to getting someone what we call a supports coordinator, which, for lack of a better term, is a case manager in Berks County. To qualify, there is criteria, and that criteria you can qualify under is for an intellectual developmental disability or autism spectrum disorder. So to start, an intellectual developmental disability is significant limitations in intellectual functioning and adaptive behaviors, which covers a range of social and practical skills. You may notice at the bottom of the slide that this formerly was known as mental retardation. And for criteria, we can still use that diagnosis if it is on older records to qualify an individual for services. So the criteria set by our state Office of Developmental Programs. There's a bulletin that outlines all the criteria. And for intellectual developmental disability supports coordination, intellectual developmental disability, you would need to meet the following criteria. You would have had to been tested by a licensed or certified psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a licensed physician that practices psychiatry, where they would have performed full IQ testing, and approximately that IQ would have to fall 70 or below in the testing. In addition, you have to meet significant limitations in maturation. I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at my screen. I'm so sorry. You basically would have to meet significant limitations or functional limitations in at least 2 areas of functioning that would be assessed on an formal adaptive assessment. And the 2 formal adaptive assessments that are recommended by our state are the Vineland or Adaptive Behavior Assessment 3. In addition, the diagnosis has to be determined or manifested prior to age 22 years of age, and the diagnosis of intellectual developmental disability would have had been made by or confirmed by a certified or licensed clinician. So any reports we will be receiving, they do need to be signed off by that certified or licensed clinician. Now, the other criteria that you can qualify for a supports coordinator is autism spectrum disorder criteria. And autism spectrum disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder that impairs a child's ability to communicate and interact with others. It also includes restrictive repetitive behaviors, interests, and activities. These issues cause significant impairment in social, occupational, and other areas of functioning. The criteria is somewhat similar. We do need to see a formal diagnostic tool, which would be considered an evaluation. And just to let you know, with evaluations for both intellectual and developmental disability, we can use neuropsychological evaluations, psychological evaluations. We can use psychiatric evaluations where they would have done the formal testing needed for criteria. We can use, sometimes we get documentation from developmental pediatricians that would have done cognitive testing. So we can use, and also school records, we can use the evaluation reports or reevaluation reports that would have been conducted by the school psychologist. So we can use those typically evaluations for criteria. One for autism, the one difference with autism is to start the process, you do need to have medical assistance and be fully eligible for the medical assistance through the state. Also, the criteria is a little bit different. We do need to see adaptive functional limitations in at least 3 areas of adaptive functioning. And adaptive functioning can refer to self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, and capacity for independent living. These standardized assessments, as I said before, that we utilize for this are the Vineland Adaptive Behavior Assessment 3 or the Adaptive Behavior Assessment System 3. We also do need to have confirmation of the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, either via licensed or certified clinician. As I outlined before with intellectual developmental disability, it is the same. So we do need to have that, and we do need to know that it manifested prior to age 22 years of age. So I did already go over that. So it's pretty much the same criteria minus the IQ score. Now, if you're interested in starting the process, you can reach out to me. My name's Jen Woods. I am considered a DD eligibility manager, and my phone number is listed. That's the main number for Sam. You would just wait for the operator and they would connect you through to me. And also my email is provided on the screen as well. And those are the easiest ways to start the process. We can also start it in other ways too. I do receive referrals from agencies. I do receive referrals from schools, doctors or clinicians. Anyone can make a referral, even yourself. You can just call me and we'll help you through the process. If you don't have your documentation, typically with release, I can reach out to the entities or resources that may have your information. With release, the schools do help out with getting information, and many agencies and clinicians also help with that as well. So we try to make the process as easy as possible, and we can walk you through step by step how we do this. If you are determined eligible, well, one, if you're not determined eligible, say we get all your information and you would not meet the criteria, you would get a letter explaining that you don't meet the criteria to get a supports coordinator, and you would get information about the county appeal process, because there is an appeal process involved that allows you to appeal the decision. There's also, we don't want you to leave without any resources. So I will refer you or provide you, I should say, with resource information for maybe you might qualify for mental health case management in Berks County. Maybe there's other agencies or resources to go to that could assist if we cannot get you connected to what we call supports coordination service. Now, if you are eligible in Berks County, there are a choice of 5 supports coordination organizations that have supports coordinators working for them. You would complete a form where you choose your supports coordination organization. You would give that, we would provide that to you, you send it back, and we would then get you assigned to the supports coordination organization of choice. You would also receive an eligibility letter confirming all. And just to note that all these services are voluntary. We can provide someone with information, but you know, with following through with the process and getting assigned, everything is voluntary throughout this whole process. So once you're involved with supports coordination, you have a supports coordinator who's there to help get you connected to resources, supports, services, funding in our system to get those services. We work with what we call federal Medicaid waivers, and they're available for individuals that are living with a developmental disability such as autism or intellectual developmental disability. There are 3 types of waiver in a developmental disability system that I'm going to talk about, but essentially a waiver was basically funding that was waived that used to support individuals living in more institutionalized settings. You may have heard that many, many years ago. And basically those that funding was waived to serve individuals in their communities in receiving various services and supports in the community. So that's what a waiver is, and it's a funding slot that an individual receives. There are a couple different kinds of waivers that we work with. The first one is the person family waiver. This waiver has a cap of $33,000. You can receive this living with your family or possibly living on your own in the community. It can pay for a wide array of services. Currently, now this number may have changed, but as of January 1st, we are currently serving 448 individuals in this waiver in Berks County. And the important thing with waivers is that everyone, you have to have medical assistance to even obtain a waiver. So it's very important that you have medical assistance. And I do talk about that when we start our process and confirm that you do have. Moving on, we have the community living waiver. The community living waiver is kind of a step up from the person family waiver. It can provide up to $70,000 in supports a fiscal year. Currently, we have 143 individuals in this waiver in Berks County. Also, it's important that you do need medical assistance. We do continue to tell you that, so you do need medical assistance. This waiver provides if individuals cannot, if they require more or like more services and supports, this is a waiver that someone will receive living in their home or maybe in the community in their home or in the community on their own. Now, the adult autism waiver is a little bit different. This is a waiver, it's not part of our developmental disability system. It's managed by the Bureau of Autism Services. And this waiver, you apply through the Bureau of Autism, and what happens is they have an interest list that you get put on. You can apply at any age, but it's typically for individuals. Their waivers are allocated for individuals, adults that are 21 and over. They do have an interest list, and if you're interested in getting on the interest list for their waivers, you would contact the 1-866-539-7689 number, or you can visit them online at the www.dhs.pa.gov/IRT. So that information is there if you're interested in applying for those waivers, but you would do that directly through the Bureau of Autism. And they can provide for various supports and services as well. That waiver in the community and home. So that is another resource that is out there. Now, the third waiver in the developmental disability system is the consolidated waiver. There is no financial cap on this waiver. This waiver is typically the one thing that it can pay for that the other waivers in our system can't is residential services, such as your community living arrangements or group homes, life sharing. It can even, for individuals that require a high need for independent living. So, or individuals that their needs exceed the person family waiver, community living waiver, their needs are so great they would require a consolidated waiver, because there is no cap on those, no funding cap on what the service, what services you receive. This can be used in, as I said, in an individual's home, but more than likely consolidated does serve individuals that live in group home placement. Currently, we have 548 individuals in Berks County that receive this waiver, and the individual does need for any waiver to have medical assistance. Now, the one thing with consolidated waiver, these slots, with all waivers, they are individual slots money and or funding. So we don't get one lump funding, like one lump sum of money and divided among everyone. We get these in slots from our state that are allocated to our county. And with consolidated waiver, it is a little bit harder. That waiver is a little bit more difficult to access. You may be, which I'm going to discuss, on the waiting list a little bit longer for that. We typically only get those funding slots if the state decides to raise our allocation, if they do or increase our capacity. We also get those, say someone doesn't have a need for their funding slot, they would go to a nursing home or pass away or move out of state, then that slot of money or funding would go up. You know, we'd have to look at our list of everyone that's an emergency need. So, but typically for any of the waivers, an individual, not just consolidated waiver services, individuals to be 21 years of age to access. Um, an individual under 21 should try to access what we call the early periodic screening and diagnostic treatment funding stream first before any waiver is considered, shall I say. This is paid for via the physical health plan and can be paid, would be funded through the physical health plan and can provide for per diem services in the home. So any individual under 21 should first access that. Individuals must be considered an emergency as defined by the Office of Developmental Programs for waiver funding. The county must have a vacancy in their capacity to always serve an individual. We have to have funding readily available. And as always, an individual must have medical assistance. As of March, of this year, there were 1,901 individuals active within the developmental disability system in Berks County. Now that number could have changed a little bit since then. There's also, we do receive a little bit of county-based funding that's given to counties that are not, it's for individuals that are not yet in waiver services that sometimes if available, we can provide that as well. Now, you might have heard me say about the wait list. So your supports coordinator will assist you in getting you on what we call the prioritization of urgency of need for services, or easier term, the PUNS list. And this basically is a tool that's utilized to identify individual service needs, urgency of need, and assist the county and state in budgetary planning. There's 3 categories on the PUNS that identify an individual's urgency of need. So first, an individual's urgency of need needs to be identified, and then we list the services on that waiting list that they're in need of. So emergency means that you need services within the next 6 months, okay? There might be something going on in your life that you need them now or within these 6 months. Maybe you're graduating from high school, or there's gonna be some life-changing event that you're gonna need that service pretty much right away. Critical means that's where you might need services within the next 2 years. Say you're graduating from high school in the next 2 years. Say you might have an aging caregiver that it may be difficult for them to provide to support you. There can be various instances that would require maybe services in 2 years. And then you can also, the other category is planning. That's services within 2 to 5 years that you may be looking at. Maybe you're graduating from high school. Maybe your life's going to be changing. Maybe your caretakers won't be available to provide support to you. So there can be many reasons, but your supports coordinator will guide you through that process, and you'll sit down and talk about your service needs and kind of figure out where you fall within the category or urgency of need. Currently in Berks County, there are 458 individuals in the PUNS list. This was as of the March date. This includes the following categories. So emergency, we had 271, critical 91, and planning 96. So you're probably thinking, what are services that can be funded, by the waivers that we work with? Well, your supports coordination, having a supports coordinator can be funded by waiver funding. Home and Community Hub, that's a service that helps individuals increase their adaptive and independent living skills and can provide it in the home or community. Companion is more individual that would take you out in the community, kind of ensure your safety when you're doing community activities. Respite is to give the caretaker or the individual a break. Maybe your caretaker is going out of town, or your parent or family member or whoever the support is that takes care of you, and you might need to go to some form of respite. Homemaker chores assist individuals, and it meets a specific certain criteria to receive this with the, basically homemaker and chore functions in your home. Also, we have day pre-vocational programs where you go during the day and you might work on certain skills at the day program. Pre-voc works on certain work skills. Supportive employment, that's employment if you would like to work in the community, but you may need some assistance and help finding employment, securing employment on and supports on the job to maintain your employment and follow up. That's what supported employment's all about. There's also transitional work services. Those are opportunities to get you ready for work and on specific jobs to help get you ready for employment. Transportation, specialized supplies. Now, specialized supplies are things that you might need that for some reason insurance may not be able to cover. We can possibly, with waiver funding, cover. There's a process for that, though. And the same with therapies, nursing, behavioral supports. That kind of falls in line with the specialized supplies. Home vehicle accessibility adaptations. Say you have a vehicle and it needs some adaptation so you can utilize it. That can be funded by waiver funding. Now, we can't buy a vehicle, but we can possibly provide the adaptation and any kind of assistive technology, whether it's communication, hearing devices, anything of that nature can possibly be covered as well. But there are processes to get that. You may have to get quotes or anything of that nature that's required of you. Also, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. My information was provided earlier. But also another individual with our county mental health and developmental disabilities program is Michelle Rowana Weber. She's our deputy administrator for children, and her contact information is as well. But if you're interested in getting connected and being referred for supports coordination services, you can gladly just reach out to me. And if you would call Michelle, she'd probably direct you to me anyway. But she is also available for any questions or anything about this process. As of this time, that's pretty much it for the presentation. And any further questions, please reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. I value your opinion in the community and encourage people to reach out to you, but if they have any additional assistance needs, they can also reach out to Abilities in Motion by going to our website at www.abilitiesinmotion.org or by calling our main office at 610-376-0010. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jacqueline.